We'll move on to a video of Marianne, who is going to be giving us an update on the LGB Alliance Conference. We'll move on to a video of Marianne, who is going to be giving us an update on the LGB Alliance Conference. I'm really pleased to welcome Marianne Driessen, who is from the Netherlands, to talk to us on Feminist Question Time. We're at the LGB Alliance Conference in London, and we're just taking a bit of a time out to record this to catch up. And so Marianne is a feminist active in the gender critical movement, and she's the country contact for WDI in the Netherlands, has been very involved in keeping everybody informed in what's going on and the activities, and is going to tell us a bit about the Netherlands, what's happening in the Netherlands, and then about this new fantastic book that you've been involved in producing and editing called Gender Rebels. So will you tell us about the Netherlands first?
We're facing, of course, law proposals about self-ID, and the other law is about the ban on so-called conversion therapy. And that law will be discussed in Parliament in the first week of December. So we started a new campaign against that, because in fact we think that the first thing that children should get is good therapy, talking therapy, as the CAS reports says, and not the tunnel vision that these children should go to.
The sort of affirmation.
The affirmation,
which is what that would be.
Yeah. So that's one thing that I'm active in, and the starting of this new campaign against this law. But the other thing, the main thing that I did last year was compiling this book.
Oh wow! Yeah, fantastic. We'll put the link in.
It's a thick book. It's a heavy book. It's 880 grams. Was the kilogram? So I brought one for you.
Thank you so much.
It's in Dutch. It is Sybilla is a good friend of mine from the feminist time during my 20s. And we met each other 3 years ago and talked about this gender ideology. And then recently I said to her, maybe we should write a book specifically for girls and young women, because they are mainly the victims of this ideology, as we've heard about these talks about it here at the LGB conference, because these gender non-conforming girls, they are driven towards this ideology and made into heterosexual boys. They think so. So when we started thinking about it, we thought, well, we want to write it from a feminist perspective. And it's not only about gender, it's not only about gender ideology, it's about all the challenges that young girls face nowadays. And that's more than that. That's also sexual harassment, violence by men. It's, in fact, it's the old stereotypes of the gender roles, but also the new stereotypes.
Yeah. So it sounds as if, rather than just focusing on one topic, a girl could read it, and a lot of questions could be explored and answered.
Absolutely. We have interviewed many. We have interviewed 10 girls and young women between 13 and 32. That's a wide range, and we've interviewed and talked to a lot of experts in the field, like psychiatrists, psychologists, doctors, parents, teachers. They're all in the book, and talk about about girls, about society, about social media. For example, we also interviewed a woman, a psychologist, and she's called, I have to look it up. She's from Sweden, and her name is Lotte Rubeck. She worked at Meta as a psychologist to prevent
Facebook.
Yeah,
it used to be.
Yeah, the Facebook and Instagram, to prevent the exposure of self-harm and suicidal images and videos on these social media that that could be that young girls could see and imitate. But she learned after 3 years that in fact this Meta company did nothing with their accounts.
Oh, wow.
Because every click is money for them.
Yeah.
So in fact, money is always more important than the mental health of young girls. So she left.
Yeah.
She didn't want to work for that company anymore. So if you read these things, you know that there's also power and money involved in this whole thing that's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's so obvious. Well, it really seems to me that as feminists and say radical feminists, a lot of our struggle is just against what people who want to make money out of things, and in the situation of money out of women. And then quite often there are other, people who aren't necessarily feminists who just want to protect girls or whatever. But this sounds really, really useful for everybody to read, not just girls, but maybe for parents.
Absolutely. I think it's important for parents to read it, especially because we have these interviews with the girls themselves, and they talk about their lives. And one of the first interviews with these girls, they're 2 girls, they're 12 and 13. They're just starting with their secondary education. And they tell us, the boys, they call us fucking whores.
Yeah.
Not as a slur, but as a normal name.
Yeah.
That's how they address us.
Yeah. Wow.
They don't call us by our names. They just say, bitch, whore.
Yeah.
That's what young girls, 12, 13 years, face nowadays.
Yeah. It's so bad, isn't it? And it's, I think it's universal, or in pretty much most countries, I suppose, because of the internet, that this is spread everywhere. So that because of porn, I guess, is a massive thing.
Yeah.
But then it gets into schools, and
we don't write
life.
about porn. We talked about it, but we don't almost finish the book, and somewhere we had to stop because there's so many topics, so many interesting topics that are involved in this, and porn would have been a topic that we should have addressed, but it was just too much. But I think many girls talk about it, and also the specialists. So it is an interesting and very important topic.
Yeah.
I think it needs another.
Yeah. I mean, the really nice thing, I'm going to show the picture again of this book. It's called Gender Rebels. At the moment, it's in Dutch, and so anybody who can speak Dutch or wants to learn Dutch, I think would be great. For you're looking to get an English publisher, and I just think it's the sort of thing you could really give to girls who are questioning gender, saying, what is this thing that they're telling us we have to be?
You could give it to girls, to parents, to teachers, to therapists who don't know what's going on, because we also interviewed therapists and psychiatrists, but about the Dutch language. We really chose to write in Dutch because there is no Dutch literature on this subject. Everything is in English, and we know that so many people, they don't read an English book.
Yeah.
They think it's too difficult, although a lot of people in the Netherlands speak a bit English, but reading a book in English, no, they won't pick it up. So we really wanted to be the first book in Dutch on this topic. And we wanted to make it accessible for the wider public. So it is not very specialist. It is plain language. It is easy to read for everyone. It's easy to understand. So that's what we want. That was our aim. But now, because it is so interesting for a wider public, we are working on an English version.
So response to it,
it's mainly positive. Sometimes on Twitter or LinkedIn, someone says it's stupid or transphobic. That's very strange, because you can read from the reaction they have not read the book, because it is very open and very open-minded to all kinds of people. For example, we have two very interesting chapters. One is written by Sybilla Claus, and it's called Among Men. I will read something from her English summary. Living undercover as a man is an ancient phenomenon in Europe. It was a way for young women to look for adventure and become financially independent. In the Netherlands, for example, we know from court records that young women quite often put on a man's suit and went to work as sailors or soldiers in order to be independent. And this chapter also covers the book Self-Made Man by Nora Vincent and my own research, I mean Sybilla's research, in Africa. She was in Kenya and South Africa, examining whether woman-to-woman marriage still existed in those regions. The answer is yes. And it's a way for the female husband to gain status and start her own family, or for a powerful woman to stay her own boss. The other wife also profits. This was when the Netherlands was debating the legalization of gay marriage, which was realized in 2001 as the first country. It's a very interesting topic, how women through the ages and centuries have always tried to manage. If they wanted to be independent, if they didn't want to marry, they didn't want to get children, they wanted to be with a woman, they tried to live as a man.
Yeah.
That's an old way. And the new way, that's also very interesting. A chapter on a group of women in the Netherlands. They call themselves het Jongensuur, the boys' hour. It originated already more than 10 years ago. A group of women who felt very gender non-conforming, so very butch lesbians mostly. They came together and address this topic. And now you see that this is drifting from being butch lesbian to trans men.
Yeah. And that's the big problem now.
But we have interviewed a woman who's 60 plus and who has been in this movement from a very young age, because she was, as a girl, she was a real tomboy, and also physically she was very masculine, very small breasts and muscular, and she was bullied and harassed her whole life during her childhood and later on when she became a woman. And then she thought, well, I'm fed up with it. If you think you're a man, then I'm a man, and call myself a man. So she changed her name, but she remained rebellious. That's why I like the title. She remained a gender rebel. She never went over that area that she thought, I am a man. I want to hormones or surgery. She remained on that level. Yeah. And now she's so self-confident. I really admire her. She's so self-confident. She says, okay, you call me what you like. I know who I am.
Yeah. And I mean, it's really interesting that you, because of being a feminist for a long time, so you're getting all this evidence and talking to young women and, you know, specialists, and then bringing it together. And I guess it's going to be, you're going to have some advice to young women about how they approach gender. And I guess sort of saying they shouldn't take drugs and pretend that they think that they're men. But what sort of other things feminist argumentation comes through in the book? Sort of how do you feel that's been important?
Yeah. You should see the book as an anthology, a collection of stories of girls and women, and a collection of essays by experts, and some chapters written by ourselves. For example, I wrote a chapter about girls and sports, and so in all these chapters you will read a different perspective, but I think the same thing that you will read through all these chapters is that it is feminist, that we put women first, women and girls first, and that they should be strong, should be proud of themselves, and like what I write in my chapter on sports. I have been a teacher of self-defense, and one of the main things that we taught girls and women is learn to say no, to set your boundaries. And that is throughout the book, that women have the right to set their own boundaries. And that's what very important if you're a mother or a teacher, that every girl has the right to set her boundaries and say no. And that is throughout the book. So in the introductory chapter written by Sybilla Claus, she writes about, well, what have all these different stories, different chapters by different people, also two men, what have they in common, and why do we put them together in this book? Or what is our vision? What is my vision, our vision? Because she worked with a small group of feminist women to talk about this issue. What is the main, in Dutch we say de rode draad, what is the line throughout the book? And that is feminism, that a woman can be what she wants to be and can make her own choices. And what I find important is when we talk about freedom, it's about when women or girls want to be free, want to be courageous, there is always something that comes before that. We have a chapter about sexuality, for example, positive sexuality. Before freedom, there's also always before that is safety. You cannot be free as a woman or a girl when you're not safe. Safety always comes first. It's very clear in the chapter on sexuality, but it's also clear in the chapter about sports and about all the other topics. So safety and freedom.
Yeah, that is, it's, and absolutely, I think that, and choice, I think, is a really big problem where they say choice comes first, when I think safety is so important. And I mean, yeah, but okay, I'm going to just read out a couple of the titles. There's one called Where Did the Tomboy Go? And there's one called Detransitioners. There's a radical feminist analysis of my transition, beyond, before and after. There's one fan fiction in Russia, and what attracts girls with autism and ADHD to fan fiction, what are girls looking for in gender and trans. There's I think it looks like I'm jumping a couple of, one by Bev Jackson, from co-founder of LGB Alliance that we're at right now, about how the lesbian girls and women fare. And then one from Lorraine Nolan, WDI Black Women's Caucus, explains how Black women experience sexism and racism. So that's really good. So there's a lot of there's a massive range in this book. And it's very up to date, isn't it? Because it's only just been published.
It's just been published, and it's very up to date because we've worked very hard in a short time.
Yeah,
within 10,
well,
less than a year. The only thing I would like to add is that, as you mentioned, there are some contributions from English-speaking writers and experts. So we translated these chapters and these interviews from English into Dutch. We're now returning for the English version, returning to the English originals. I think that's 20% of the book. But for the rest, we have to translate it into English, of course. And we're looking out for an English.
That would be so amazing. And for the moment, for those who can read Dutch, do they get it at genderrevels.org?
They can get it. You can buy the book at Amazon.com, .com, and any online publisher. You can buy it. You can find information on Gender Rebels stores. I find it so interesting that Kate Harris, in her last book, she said, be the example, be the rebel, show what you are.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the message of this book.
Yeah.
So that's really great. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you heard it first here. And Marianne, thank you so much. Well done doing the book, and we'll do what we can to help.